Hi everybody, it's Millie and welcome back to my channel. And today marks a very special day for me because I am midway through August, which means it has officially been 1 year since I left Australia and moved to Ireland. So for a bit of backstory, if you are new here, obviously my name's Millie and I was born in England. I lived there until I was 17, and then when I was 17, I flew to China to meet a boy. And then me and that boy moved to Australia, where we lived for 5 years. Then last year, we decided to make the move to Ireland. It's now been 1 whole year, and I felt it was right to kind of sit down and talk about it a bit more. I'm not very good at these kind of sit down talking videos. I wrote my little notes here about everything I really did want to mention, so hopefully I don't miss anything, but if I do and people have any questions or anything, you can drop them in the comments and I can answer as much as possible. I don't want to say this video is just my own experience after living in Ireland. My experience will be different from everyone's experience. That's just how the nature of moving to a different country works. But I will add a little summary at the end and kind of say how I feel about Ireland as a whole. The number one way that Ireland has kind of changed me is that I have definitely become more comfortable with being in a small town. I don't want to get too into it really, but one of the main reasons I left the UK was just my discomfort at the way I was living. When I was living in the UK, the number one thing I could think of all the time was leaving. Getting out of my hometown, getting somewhere different, living anywhere else. And obviously I made it happen, but I was so desperate for life to be different. I wanted to be away from my small town. I wanted to be somewhere new. I wanted to be somewhere where I wasn't me, basically. And obviously living in Australia for so many years, I spent a lot of that time in Melbourne. Very big city, lots of people. It's a very dense city and I loved it. Don't get me wrong, Australia was home for so many years for a reason. It was absolutely incredible, but moving to Ireland was definitely a big change. I went from a huge city to a small town. I think it's technically a village. And I was really kind of worried when I knew when we were moving, because I knew how I was when I first lived in that small town. I wanted to get out. I couldn't do it. I wanted to be anywhere else but where I was. And I think the first kind of month or two, I definitely had that in the back of my head. I was like, I can't go back to that small town. But definitely over the year, I found myself getting more and more comfortable with living in a small town. I will say, because my husband does have his driving license, I don't yet, it's really hard to get. My husband has his driving license, and we have access to a car and we can kind of get out when or if we need to. There's obviously a load of stuff we like to do. I've been to, shopping centers, events, motorbike meets, everything. So I do get out, but I'm kind of okay with where we are right now. Obviously this isn't our forever home. I have mentioned before that I do love my husband's parents and we are kind of hoping to find a place of our own. But I think I'd be happy if we ended up buying in a small town too. It's not as bad as teenage me thought it was. The second way Ireland has changed me is I have definitely become a lot more outgoing. That's not really by choice. It was definitely, I kind of had to be, because when you move to a new country, especially in your 20s, if you want to make friends, if you want to meet new people, you have to put yourself out there. I am very lucky in the fact that my closest friend in Ireland reached out to me first. But at first I was nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, what if she actually doesn't like me? What? And I was like, you know what? I've got to do it. I've got to go. I've got to make new friends and meet new people. And I have no regrets so far. I also work a retail job. And part of that job is I pretty much have to talk to everyone who comes in. And at first, I didn't love it. It was difficult. It was not who I am. It was incredibly awkward most of the time. But now I've been working for 6-7 months and it's like second nature to me. Everyone comes in, even if they don't want to buy or whatever. I'm good for a chat. I'll talk to people. I'll talk about anything, you know, the weather, how things are going, what's on around town, like everything. And I think me 2-3 years ago couldn't even do that. I think me 2-3 years ago would happily never talk to anyone else ever again. And I am very glad that Ireland has changed me for the better. Another way that I've changed since coming here is actually finding myself whilst working and finding my place in the world of work, I guess. If you've seen my videos before, you'll know that I was a housewife for 4 or 5 years-ish. I spent that time, you know, doing things that a housewife would do, cooking, cleaning, and I made videos about it on the internet. And I will say, I don't regret that time. I was very happy with the life I had then. It suited the lifestyle, it suited the life we had. Then moving to Ireland, obviously, life is different. We don't have our own place anymore. We are kind of looking for bigger and better things in life, and sometimes those bigger and better things need a little more money, and obviously my little income does help a bit, and it is kind of what we need at the moment. And the first couple of months were hard. I will say it was very difficult for me to go from, you know, having my own time, living life as I wanted it, to having a job, having people to answer to, having routine. So it was quite abrupt. It was a difficult change, but I'm very glad it's a change I made. I think I really enjoy my work. My co-workers are really great people, and I think, you know, this is a job I can see myself doing for a while. Hopefully, you know, things pick up, get better, and I can maybe work my way up to some kind of management level if I just stay hopeful there. But I'm very glad that I was able to find work here. I love who I work with, I love where I work, and I'm very glad that Ireland has changed me in this way. One of the greatest things about moving actually has to have been reconnecting with friends and family. Obviously, living in Australia, especially during COVID, there was no travel. There was no way I could go, you know, pop over and see my family for a weekend, or go hang out with friends I knew from high school or college. And that was tough. I didn't really talk about it online because I felt I didn't need to, but being away from your family for so many years is difficult. No matter what kind of relationship you have with them, it's tough. It was hard. And then obviously moving to Ireland, I saw my parents very quickly, and it has been the biggest blessing. I am so happy to be so close to my family again. I'm going to see them in a couple months, and you know, I've just booked hotels and stuff. I'm so excited to go see my family, and I love them so much. I don't know how I managed not seeing them for so long. But another good thing is being near friends as well. So I obviously went through the whole school system up to college in the UK, and whilst I don't have many fond memories of school itself, I did meet some amazing people there, and you know, being able to reconnect with people coming back has been amazing. Even just last week, a friend of mine who I met in my English class in college, she popped over to come see me for the day, and it was absolutely incredible. We spent all day, you know, going to the Lego store, looking at books, buying books, wandering around Dublin, and I really just felt like I was showing my friend around the place I live, my home, and spending all day just doing the things that made me happy, and it was absolutely incredible. And I just think, as amazing as Australia was, I never felt like it was a place I called home. It was just the place I lived. Here, I have friends, I have family, I have colleagues. I really felt like I've kind of built my network in a way that I didn't expect, but I'm very glad I've been able to. But there is something I kind of wanted to touch on that is kind of personal for me, so it might not be relevant to everyone who watches this video, but it is for me, and it's that obviously being a person who is English in Ireland is always going to come with kind of a bit of a complex identity, just because of the history of the two countries. And it's even more complex for me as I have family ties to Ireland. However, I never really explored that growing up until, you know, the first time I came to Ireland was when I was 20. So my entire childhood, even though I have family here, even though I have family history here, I never really explored that. It wasn't, it wasn't something that was offered to me, and it wasn't something I really cared enough about to explore myself. So I just kind of ignored it, and then moving here as an adult, there's always, obviously there's the jokes and stuff, but I don't really care about that. The jokes are fine, whatever. It's not really something I'm like, oh no. It's not really something I care about, but there's always like a little bit of it that kind of touches me, and I'm just like, oh well, I kind of wish I knew more about the Irish part myself, the Irish part of my own family history, but I understand why I don't. That is something very personal. It just is one of those things where, when the jokes are said, I'm like, very funny. And then obviously a little bit later think about it, I'm like, damn, well, it kind of sucks. But, I'll always kind of feel like an outsider here, I think. Even though people aren't directly very cruel or mean to me, people are lovely. I've never had anyone say anything actually mean to me. People are just kind of interested about how I ended up here, especially when I mentioned I lived in Australia and stuff. It's always kind of curiosity more than accusatory, kind of, what are you doing here? It's more of a, what are you doing here? And, like I said, people have never been actually cruel to me. So it's not something I think about too much, but every so often I'm just like, oh, well, it is what it is. But no, obviously I love being here and I understand the history between the two places, but I always wonder how I'm gonna feel in like 5-10 years time if, I start a family here and I live here permanently. How am I gonna feel always being an outsider? But that is for future Millie to worry about. Obviously I do not have children here, we haven't bought a house, we're not like settled in properly, so that's a future me problem. Overall, I am glad that I moved to Ireland. It has been possibly the most incredible year of my life. It has been intense, it's been full on, it's been tough at times, I won't lie, it has been tough, but I'm glad that my husband and I made the move to Ireland. And I really am excited to see kind of where I end up in the future. Hopefully settled in here, happy, house, job, children, everything. That's the goal. But whatever happens, happens. And I hope that you are willing to join me for my journey. I've obviously been quite busy with work, so I haven't had videos coming out as regularly as I'd like. But I really hope I can have a little more of a regular upload schedule. So hopefully I will see you next week with a brand new video. Bye bye for now.